The next speaker is Nick Bamber, who's Chief Growth Officer at Missguided. Nick, again, as usual, you've got 99 seconds or you get horned off. It's now over to you.
Perfect, thanks guys. So yeah, very quick actually, clearly. But for me, assuming you want profitable growth in your business, then 2 points from me. Number one, absolutely know your thresholds. By that I mean, depending on what industry you are in, you must figure out how much you want an average new customer to actually earn you in a year. So just take an example. Assume you want a customer to pay back in 1 year. If they earn you £10 in 1 year, then your blended CPA needs to be 10 quid. Quite simple. Now, notice I stressed the word blended. It takes me to my next point, and hence this piece on measurement. Be very careful with last click ROAS and last click CPA measurements. This will definitely kill your growth. 2 reasons. Google and Facebook don't play nice. If you're looking at Google Analytics, you have to look at other data sources, whether it be 1 day post click, 7 day post view, 7 day post click, etc. Depends on the activity. And second point, be absolutely clear that you must review the holistic trends in your business. So not just the channel specific stuff. So you've got to look at total business performance, like total traffic, total new customer acquisition, total revenues. If you look at the channels in its silo, you will not grow. Did I manage to break your 99?
Oh, you've done it. I think you win the award for doing the shortest time. Congratulations. That was 26 seconds to go. Amazing. Okay, we're moving on to questions now. So reminders to everyone watching and listening, bottom of your screen is a Q&A icon. Click it. First question is from Chris. What is the key metric that Missguided works to? New customers, profit, revenue? Hi, Nick, by the way, he says.
Hello. It very much depends on the market by which we are marketing. By that, I mean, some markets we have some sort of maturity. In some markets, we are a completely new incumbent. Therefore, where we are a complete new incumbent, clearly we have no business there, so it's acquisition, hence probably CPA. And then other markets where we have a bit more maturity, then it's a mixture of combinations. So CPA and to some degree, ROAS. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, perfect. Next question is from Mike. He says, how are you measuring, attributing across all interactions clicks if you're trying to avoid just last click metrics? I totally agree with this, but from a business and MarTech perspective, if I can appreciate that it's not particularly straightforward, I can appreciate it's not particularly straightforward.
No, it's definitely not straightforward. And this is the whole point. Like, you have to have eyes on so many data points to be able to unpick if things are working or not working. And hence why my point was, depending on what you're actually doing, really. So if you take Google and Facebook taking, I imagine, a large part of people's budgets, then treat them very separately and understand the different measurement KPIs within different parts of each of their funnels. So a good example would be things like buying a reach and frequency campaign on Facebook advertising, for example. We won't look at that like through a lens of 1 day post click, because that's not what it's designed to be doing. We'll probably take more of a post view approach. Whereas it's something like retargeting, we'll probably look a lot tighter at a post click performance, but then not killing ourselves, because we have to look at the total performance over that time period, if that makes sense. That's why I go back to those holistic metrics. Like, you have to see movement in more than just a couple of things. There's lots of movement that can happen.
Excellent. Next question, Pat. How do you attribute back to channel mix from a blended CPA?
What was the first part? Sorry, I broke it.
Attribute back to channel mix from blended CPA. I'm
sorry, just say the start part again.
How do you attribute back to channel mix?
Okay. Sorry. How do you? Yeah. Not that simply. Hence why it's a bit of a bowl of spaghetti. But I think with the right people, with the right eyeballs, one can quite easily make assumptions. And it is that, to be fair, when you're in a very high growth business, like Missguided, one of the fastest growing fashion businesses in the world, you have to have eyes in lots of different places. So it's not that easy. So I would say difficulty.
So next question is, and I think a lot of people are thinking this, a lot of the festival this week and wider has talked about the unsustainability of the fashion industry. How can especially fast fashion brands really resonate post-lockdown and beyond, particularly with a growing sense of purpose? Big question.
Yeah, it is a big question, really. And I don't really think, fast fashion is really a thing, to be fair. It's just a fashion business, right? I think that fast fashion is a label people have put on it. So I think it goes beyond that one, really. I mean, people buy new clothes. That's what they do, and we're there to provide that. I think the fact it shifted online, it's just moved in favour of some of the fast fashion, but that's not really, where we see ourselves. I don't know if that helps answer the question.
It does. There's a question here from Felix, which is quite similar, who says, there's been lots of big behavioural changes in the fashion industry and elsewhere during the pandemic. Do you think these behavioural changes will continue afterwards, and how will you change to meet them?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's also the $1 million question, right? So yeah, of course, online has become more important during this lockdown. There's no doubt. Will that continue? I expect it will continue. Yeah, I actually think it will. Not just in fashion retail, but I think in other sectors too. Certainly, I mean, you could look at a broad range of sectors where it's changed, but e-commerce in general, I think, will continue to be high growth.
Perfect. Next question from Alex is, how do you distribute your media investment by looking at so many data points? Surely each data point will tell a different story.
That's a very, very good question, because there's a lot of cognitive bias goes into media selection, I'm sure. So one can easily find the data to prove what they want to do. So yeah, I mean, there's no easy way around that one. I think it's a blend of looking at multiple data points, the obvious ones that you can get from everywhere, whether it be things like YouGov brand tracking, clickstream data, Facebook data, etc., etc., etc. It could be sometimes as simple as what a competitor's doing, and doing a really deep competitor analysis, and just, you don't always have to be innovative, so to speak. You can find a formula that's worked for other people and test that formula. But I think the key thing there is you've got to live in an agile world in this growth market, without a doubt. If you think you know what works, that's probably the first stalling point. I don't think you do know what works.
Great point. Next question is from Johanna, who asks, how do you balance brand and performance at Missguided?
I mean, it's a horrible terminology, that, and I think all of us in marketing these days despise brand and performance marketing, because I've heard this said a few times, and I'll keep repeating it. For me, all marketing is performance marketing. It's just, when do you expect that performance to come? That's probably the key point. So, there's obviously parts of the funnel that actually deliver instantaneous results, but other parts are a bit more, as you might call, brand building. It's a very, very difficult question to answer quickly, that one. So I'm going to say I can't answer that one in the time period we have. But I'd love to pick up with these people offline, because I'd learn from how they do it too.
Definitely. Let's have this next one. Another shy little anonymous attendee says, a lot of the fashion and wider industry has talked about unsustainability of how. Sorry, ignore that. We've gone through that one. We've gone through that one already. So I've got one here from Louis, who asks, what about offline? What's your offline strategy, and what's your view on how the high street will manage to continue to thrive or even exist post lockdown?
Oh boy, that's going to be tough. I mean, how's the high street going to survive for fashion retail? That's a tough place to be. So it's almost impossible to answer that one. How's that going to survive? It's an area that I do not work in currently. Clearly, I work in online fashion. And the amount of focus groups and surveys that we do with our customer base, which is substantial, who are predominantly 16 to 24-year-old females, they've not been shopping on the high street for a while now. So COVID's no real blocker to them. Of course, there's certain anchor shops that they might visit, for example, Primark. But in general, it's not a trend that they actually have been doing in the past. So I think the online players are in a very good position to take or continue to be growing actually in this market. I think the high street is going to be a tough place.
Nick, we're bang on time. Thank you so much. Great Martin Central and great insightful answers. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining.